Hello YouTube, my name is Brian and I thought I would just make a video about my testimony. I'm not good at this, so bear with me. I want to shout out a few people. Photo Helix, I want to thank him. He was been a very kind brother, and he's the one that kind of pushed me, I guess, to do a video. And I want to thank Awakened Saint, and another one is Sergeant Dog Rick. After watching his video and testimony, it kind of gave me encouragement, but when I first started watching his video, I just started getting butterflies. And this is not an easy thing for me to do. I've never been a person to get up in front of any kind of audience or group. I just can't do that. But anyways, like I said, my name is Brian, and I started a YouTube with no content as of yet. This will be my first video, The Truth Puzzle Life, because my life is it seems like the truth. That's all I want to know is the truth, and it seems like a big puzzle, and I've just been throughout my life putting pieces together to form the big picture. But there's a puzzle piece right in the center of that puzzle that God himself holds and won't be put into place until I think all has been fulfilled as far as my life is concerned. So I just want to start off by telling you a little bit about myself and how I was brought up in a blue-collar family, like you might have seen on the hot seat with Photo Helix. Thank you again, Photo. And so I feel that there is purpose in everybody's life, and in my life it started when I was 2 years old. I ended up with pneumonia and almost died and was hospitalized for a while, but yeah, God made sure I was still around. So I let up later on in life. I think I was around 14, and I used to get styes in my eyes, and I ended up having a stye going to school. I think I was about 14, and my eye was a little bit puffy. No big deal, it's a stye. So I went to school, came home, went to bed. Well, the next morning I woke up by the alarm in bed, and I just throw the covers off and sit up, and I stood up, and the next thing I know, I'm waking up on the ground. I had passed out. I couldn't hardly see. I could see a little bit out of my right eye. So I crawled into the bathroom, and I pulled myself up on the counter and looked in the mirror, and I looked like Elephant Man. From my temple to my shoulder, my whole face and neck was swollen out. My eye was completely closed. My right eye was pretty much swollen where I had a slit where I could see out of it. So I was pretty freaked out. So I continued to climb up the stairs. My dad had already left for work, and my mom was asleep in bed, and I crawled upstairs and crawled into her bedroom, and I climbed up on the side of the bed, and I was like, "Mom, Mom." Well, when she woke up and took a look at me, she sat up and screamed, and oh my gosh, I got to get you to the hospital. So we ended up making it to the doctors, and they did all their tests and everything. And it was a misdiagnosis. What had happened is they said I had a severe sinus infection, and I had infection all the way up into my sinus canals up near my brain, and they said I was pretty lucky that I came in when I did, because it could have been a matter of hours. I probably would have died. So they gave me all these drops and medications after all the blood tests they've taken. Yeah, come to find out years later, I had some tests done. I wanted to have children. Found out that I had the mumps, and it made me sterile. So mumps is nothing to mess around with. Well, I should have died then, but I didn't. There must have been a purpose. So I'm living my life. And I can remember hearing the voice of God. Well, let's start back when I was about 8 years old. As a kid, I have two sisters, one older, one younger, and I was the middle child and the only boy. So I got it from both ends because the older knew better, and the younger, well, she was too young, so I kind of got in the middle from both sides. And I must have been out of shape, you know, blaming, feeling sorry for myself. So I went for a little walk out in this field, and I just, I, I had it out with God. I told him he was nothing. He's, you know, wow, I just went off on God, feeling sorry for myself, I guess. But then immediately after, I repented. And so growing up, I figured everybody knew God and believed in God. Well, the older I got, the more I found out that I wasn't the case. So a little bit later, I can remember hearing the voice of God in that still small voice, and it was always, you know, read my word, read my word. So I'd pick it up and I would try to read, thou begot thus, thus begot thou, and I just couldn't do it. So I'd close it up, and throughout my life I kept hearing that still small voice telling me to read my word. Well, and let's skip to about 15. And I was always curious about the Bible. I believed in God, and I knew the word was true, and I believed in UFOs and ghosts. So I went to my mom one day. She was washing dishes, and I said, Mom, what's the origin of God? And she thought about it for a second, and she said, well, I don't know. So I said, okay, well, what about ghosts? And she's just, you know, thinking about it. And I said, well, what about UFOs? Well, my mom said, well, you know, I do remember hearing something. There's this book that this guy wrote named Chariots of the Gods by Eric Van Doniken. Wow. As soon as I heard that, boy, I went and found that book and ended up getting every one of his books and Zecharia Sitchin, and I just read all of these things. And so I knew the Bible was true, and I was reading these other people's work, and I'm like, okay, UFOs in the Bible. So I was starting to believe that in the Bible these UFOs are, I guess, the angels, and I was kind of just wanting to know the truth about all this. So I started studying all these different abduction cases and UFO phenomenon, Bigfoot and whatever have you. I started researching into religions and mythologies, and I read this one book called The Watchers. I can't remember who the author was. It was a woman. She was a Christian, and it was her story about her being abducted. And she was led to believe that they were the angels, and they seated us here, and they were kind of playing the part of God. And then I found these books at a secondhand store. It was a whole trilogy of books called The Life and Teachings of the Masters of the Far East. And wow, I'll tell you what. So putting all this together, and I was just absorbing everything, and I had no discernment as a child, and even as a young adult, believing all these things. And when I was younger, I started writing a novel. It was all about UFOs and abduction cases, and I actually had a bunch of people that I would speak to that believed they were abducted. So I found this guy. He was a licensed hypnotist, and he agreed for my novel to hypnotize these people that volunteered, and I was gonna get them hypnotized, and they were gonna tell their story, and it was gonna be for my book. Well, at the same time, I was wanting to know the truth, and I was really angry. I was hurting because none of this seemed to make sense. It wasn't fulfilling. It wasn't spiritually fulfilling. And all I wanted to know was the truth. And I remember I was on graveyard shift working up in Washington for a company. I was a supervisor. And it was my lunch break. There was nobody else in the lunchroom, and I had my Bible, and I was reading the Bible, and I was confused, I was hurt, I was angry, and I was just an emotional wreck. I was a wreck all the way around. And I just simply bowed my head and I prayed, and I said, Lord, I am so confused. I don't know what to do. I just wanted it all to end because of the confusion and chaos. And I said, Lord, show me the truth. And at that very moment, I felt this weight. It was like a dark shadow mass. And it started lifting out of my body, starting with my toes. And as it started to lift out, my toes became light. And as it moved up, the lightness filled me when the darkness was coming out. And you know that soft spot in the top of your head? This thing lifted out of me like you would grab your thumb and squeeze it tight. And when you pulled it, you could feel that pop. And that is exactly what it felt like when it left. And God just filled himself in me. And it was just the most amazing experience and feeling I have ever felt in my life. And I was just so full of life. And at that moment when he pulled that out of me, all the questions I had up until that point were just made known in a split second. It's almost like God downloaded all of the answers to my questions, what I was researching and what I was studying. And he just gave it to me. And the one thing that he wants me to tell you is that no matter whether in heaven or on earth, everybody will bow to the only name, and that name is Jesus Christ. And that is when I really started digging into the Word. And I had a co-worker that I was working with at the time, and he got heavily into cocaine, and he ended up getting counseling through a church. And he gave me the greatest piece of advice. He goes, well, stop reading at the beginning of the Bible and just jump right to the New Testament. And when I did that, and I just couldn't get enough. I read the New Testament, and I reread the New Testament, and I literally wore out the binding and cover of my Bible. It was an NIV at the time. It was the easiest to read and make sense of. I always had a difficulty in reading as a child. I had special education. It wasn't because I couldn't read, it's because what they would call now is ADD or ADHD. I would read several pages, and then I would be thinking about something else. So I'd have to go back and reread it. Well, I'm still that way today. If something doesn't interest me, I can't read it. I have to reread it. But anyways, so my journey began there. Not only was I delivered physically, but spiritually as well. Now, I was saved. I was a born-again believer back when I was around 14, 15. Around that time was a real difficult time. But I went to a concert with a friend. It was a Christian concert, and I gave my life to Jesus at that concert. But without discernment, I didn't really understand what it was all about. You know, I went through the motions and everything. But I believe God had a purpose for my life, and he let me fall on my face, which he will do over and over again, but he will always lift you up. And as far as my life being a giant puzzle, it's not just me. I believe it's for everybody. I mean, the world, life is a big puzzle when we're trying to put the pieces together. And I guess that's kind of where I could leave it for now. That's my testimony. I've had a lot of other things happen in my life. I think I'll save that for another time. When it comes to the technology and the computers and all that, even going on to YouTube, I still don't really have a handle on how everything works, how to highlight names. There's a difference between my Android phone and my laptop as I'm learning. There's another thing. It's all my life I've been speaking to people about God and about the stuff I've learned, but nobody is accepting of it. It's like you want to share it with people, but you share it with people that don't have ears to hear. And it gets so frustrating because you want to share the stuff that you have learned, and you want to share Jesus with people. But you get criticized and you get knocked down, and it was just hard. So I would share and I'd be beat down, and then I'd be like, you know, maybe I shouldn't be doing this, but that's not God's plan for me. So I just have to suck it up and I have to continue on, and you keep getting beat down, but God is there to pick you up every time. I've also learned, I've felt like I've went through a Job moment where I was a big prepper, and I prepped and I prepped and I got supplies, and I amassed quite a library of all the thesauruses, dictionaries, the Hebrew and Greek translations, and everything was taken away from me. I lost everything, and then I realized that, you know, I was putting more trust in myself and what I could do to prep instead of relying on God. And so I believe that was a blessing in disguise. You know, some of God's greatest gifts are unanswered prayers, just like the Garth Brooks song. And I realized that it is true. I was relying on myself and not 100% on God. And by losing everything, that was made quite apparent to me. And once I started putting my 100% faith and trust in God, wow, he really turned my life around. And unbeknownst to me, he will give you better friends than you can pick yourself. Friends are in name a friend, but the ones that truly have your back is a different story. And I believe that God has brought me to what I call my new second family, and it's a lot of you YouTubers that might know me in chat. And I guess I'll leave it there. I have a lot more subject material to talk about, and I guess that'll wrap it up. I don't want to make it too long, so I will catch you on the next video. So thank you for listening, and hopefully this wasn't too odd because I'm not a great speaker, but there will be more to come. I hope you're interested. So I have a lot to share, and I have a lot to learn, and I'm looking forward to chatting with you all later. Thank you. Bye.